No stressing. I need my blessings. I need my blessings, yeah. I cannot stress it all. I'd rather just dance it up. I do my dance with God. Sometimes might smoke it up. Sometimes might drink it up. I do not fear at all. So yeah, so if you are Christian, if you are, really religious, and you like, well, where is she getting this shit from? She's talking to her ass because it's in the book, so you just gotta know that it's true. Because I remember thinking like that. Just look up the history of the book. I think that was one of the first places I started. First, I started reading the Bible. First, I stripped away everything everybody taught me. I'm like, okay, I don't know why I'm questioning this, what's going on. I was raised Christian. So I'm like, okay, let me go with a blank mind. I've always been a writer, always been a creative, always wrote poems, stories, and stuff since I was a little kid. Songs, always. So I'm like, let me get into my writer's mind or tap into those skills and let me completely clear my mind of everything. And let me start reading the Bible from my own understanding, as if nobody taught me anything. And what would I take from it? That's where I started. That's where a lot of where my perception came from my own understanding, from reading the Bible without the teachings that were taught to me. And it was easy for me to strip them because a lot of them I did not believe in or did not sit right or well with my spirit. And that's another thing. A lot of people will trust their spirit any other time, but when it comes to that, they don't. And that's because you taught that, oh, you're going to go to hell if you know what I mean? And that's something scary to face yourself with every day. I encourage y'all to release it. Let it go. Don't ever in your life tell yourself you facing an eternal burning. God would never want that for you. He never created you for that. Don't humanize God either. To think that God is like you and me. We here to have a human experience. Like this, God is way bigger than he or she or what we can fathom with our minds. Just way bigger. But I would encourage y'all to look up the history of the Bible. I think that Black people talk so much about being faithful to the Bible and being faithful to church. But we know in general, education is not a big thing in Black communities, right? Which means the literature of the Bible is almost never taught, honestly. Like the history of that literature I've never heard somebody discuss the origination of the Bible when I was growing up. And I was in church every single Sunday, Saturday, Wednesday, Thursday, holiday, New Year's Eve, Christmas Eve, Halloween. I mean, literally, never heard nobody discuss that. So after reading it myself and determining, I already knew I was not about to stick to no specific religion after reading the Bible the first time. Because in my opinion, the reading the Bible was like reading like Macbeth or some of them books that you read in high school. If you go to a high school where you got to read books. I'm not trying to be funny because I went to inner city school in the suburbs. And I ain't read books till I got to the suburbs. I read them on my own, but not at school. So it was like reading Shakespeare or something like that. So to me, from my own perception of reading it, before I even looked up the history, which backed it up, backed up what I already believed. But reading it, it was like, this is, to me, a book to reference God. It's as if a human a long time ago, like, I'm going to write a story, but I want a lot of symbolism to a higher power because I believe in a higher power. That's what I got from reading the Bible. And then I looked at the history of it, right? Now, the Old Testament is easy to get that concept from. The Old Testament started it because the Old Testament ain't no Jesus in the Old Testament. The Old Testament existed over more than 100 years before the New Testament. Like, the Old Testament was here for a long time. And the Old Testament is just about God as an energy force sending messages down to the people and like destroying cities because the cities were full of negative energy and people doing messed up stuff and just drinking themselves out, and everybody was violent and drugs and stuff like that. So it was a bunch of symbolism and stuff. So from reading the Old Testament, you can automatically get the gist of it. Like, I understand. You're supposed to be a good person. It's going to come back around to you. But you think it's God. Like, oh, nope, I see you doing that. Boom. Nope, I see you doing that. Boom. But no, he put the power of your own karma inside of you. Literally. You know what I mean? But to me, that was just symbolism. And then from the times that it was written in, it makes sense. It just made perfect sense. Right? Then the New Testament came along, and that's when I had even more questions than I had growing up as a Christian. It was just like, why did we ever worship? Like, why are we ever worshiping like Jesus as a person? It did not make sense. Jesus in the Bible tells people not to praise him. But there are scriptures that say, oh, you got to go through him and da-da-da. Who is saying this? Because God did not physically exist in his time to speak. You get what I'm saying? These people are saying this and people are just like, yep, it's in the Bible. Da-da-da. Like, what? Jesus in the Bible tells people not to praise him and consistently praise to God. And his story is told from other people's perspectives, and I think that's a big thing to take note of, is that Jesus was a person who did no wrong or didn't. However, his story is told from other people's perspective, and it was during a time where a lot of people apparently was doing a lot of wrong. What we consider sins and stuff, like a lot of the stuff that we call out for people, we don't know if he actually did or not. He could have been gay on the low. How will we know that? Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, from reading the Bible, there's no way you would know that. There's no way you would know that at all. Like, you just would not know. So, for one, reading that, you could tell it was symbolism. Then when I looked up because even Jesus didn't stay in one place and go to church. And then church was when people sat and talked wherever he went. So it was just like, yeah, how did we get here to where we are in today's time as far as religion and church? If that's not even the person that y'all praying, that's not what he... Rome took over Jerusalem years ago, right? The Old Testament had already existed in Jerusalem. When Rome took over Jerusalem, they hired a committee of people, a number of people, to dedicate books to the new Bible, right? For the new rule, which is very common in Roman history, white people history. Which, don't take that in a type of way. I'm black, I'm African American, so all I know, is what I know. So they hired a committee of people to write these books to dedicate to the Bible. Now, what I was taught growing up, or how it was taught to me, was that the names of the Bible were the people who wrote those books. John wrote John. But according to history, which is documented, just like the first president and shit, the names of the books, they were named those to dedicate those books after the people. So the book of John was dedicated to John. John did not write. History says that when Rome took over Jerusalem and hired this committee, it was at least over 100 years after these people supposedly were alive, right? Again, Jesus, there was no story of Jesus at all before the Roman Empire, before they took over Jerusalem. Nowhere, not even within Jerusalem. Which is why historically it had always been viewed as a white man, which you can find old stuff of people trying to depict it as black, but I feel like there were black people from Jerusalem, so they're being overtaken by this white ruler. They probably created it in their own way or whatever. Anyways, so these people have been dead for over 100 years or so. Also, history tell it, most of those people were illiterate. The only one who was suspected not to be illiterate was Paul. And the writings that they found from Paul said that he believed, and I'm summarizing, right? This is public info. The only writings that they claim to have found from Paul, which, remember, was the only one who's supposedly not illiterate, said that he didn't believe that we were viewed as women or males in God's eyes, and that we were just energy, like electricity. I don't know if electricity was the word per se. That's why I said I'm gonna have to look it up, because I'm a little high right now. But again, I did this research a while ago. I read these books a while ago, so it's not like the same research I could do to look it up, you could do to find it and grab the book. I read it as an ebook. So yeah, so this is at least like 100 years after. So I feel like for them to have found writings from Paul, and it was not a story of Jesus, yet they dedicated a book where they created this character to him, just to pay homage, I guess, to those who came before, who believed in a spiritual higher being. It was common to believe in a spiritual higher being back then, but it was not as common as people think. And a lot of times it was forced as a form of control, more so than it being a way of life. It still was kind of an orthodox kind of thing, even, you know what I mean, when all this was happening. It wasn't like how today's time is now. But if you think about it, because religion has a history of being forced and so forceful, think about how our society is now. My question to anybody who's religious, who still may be watching this video, is if you don't think that your religion is forceful on you, the moment the moment you heard me say it's okay to believe in God and not Jesus, what did you think in your head? If it was anything about me going to hell, if it was anything negative about me, that is a reflection of your religion. Because you only thought that because of your religion and how it's taught to you. And God would not want you to think negative about somebody in their way of thinking or questioning or anything. No religion offends me. Even though I disagree, it doesn't offend me, because I know you're just a human believing in a way to praise a higher being. I know your intention. God knows your intention. Like that, it doesn't. But to not believe in Jesus almost like hurts as a Christian. And I say that because I was a Christian, and it just be like, ooh, like, oh, like heavy. And I hate it. Oh, I hated feeling like that about people. I hated feeling like that about people. I hated my aunt making us leave a church one time because she felt like a dude that was in the choir and this praise team was gay. Literally. After we just got dressed and traveled all the way to this church, and she damn near had like, I can't, because that ain't, just left and damned the whole church basically because of what you assume someone's sexual preference is. And what does that have to do with their relationship with a higher power? Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, that's, if you want to believe that stuff, that's fine. That's on you. But the one thing I ask you not to believe is stop believing that you are damned for hell. Like, no matter what, you just sin and being, and you're going to go to hell. Sinning is something you do against yourself. God sent you here to have an experience for you. The same way you have a child and you try and raise them to have the best life that they can have for themselves. You teach them to be an individual so they can live and move for themselves. God brought us here for that very same reason. He wants you to enjoy your life. He wants you to take charge of your life, but he wants you to enjoy your life. He don't want you to have back karma. You don't got no reason to have back karma. You don't got no reason to go through negative things if you take more responsibility for you, how you treat people. You know, it's crazy because the black people are known to be some of the most devoted religious people, but we are the most separate as a community, as a group of people. And that should say something to you right there. Because a place where is God, there should be community, there should be love, there should be togetherness, but it's not. That's because we got this false sense of, oh, God made us to sin, and da-da-da. God made you to take control of your actions. Sinning is something you do against yourself, okay? You know you don't feel good when you drink or smoke, whatever. Why you drink and smoke? That's a sin. You know it's not for you to be disrespectful, but you feel like maybe your situations is forcing you to be a bit more disrespectful. You sinning against yourself. Get out of that situation. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, this life is to be for your experience. Praise God. Thank God along the way. Like, don't ever forget it, because that's the true essence of you. But don't get lost in these stories or in these processes. Don't think that you ever fall short. You don't ever have to be saved You were born saved. You are born with the power of God in you. You don't need, you get in the shower every day. I hope you do. Hope you ain't like B. Simone. But if you get in the shower every day, get in the shower every day and you talk to God. You don't need a stranger who says they are qualified to baptize you. You don't need to be baptized. It's something renewing about being in water in general. And I start feeling that after I stopped being a Christian. It is something about being in water. But it also has been proven, even scientifically, that the way energy flows through water is like at a fast magnitude, at a heavy magnitude. So when you step in water with positive energy, that positive energy is emitting through the water, right? That's another thing about spirituality. This video is going to be long. That's another thing about spirituality. Christianity, sorry I keep dissing y'all a little bit, but in my experience, every Christian church I've been to has supported the American diet. Not even just the American diet, but the African American diet that has existed for all these years, which is extremely unhealthy, which is not balanced at all, just not educational as far as like what food is, how it moves you, what it does for you. You know, all we care about is taste. Give me as much meat and cheese, and you know what I mean? Like, spirituality forces you to acknowledge food. Like the way I just said, I understood the power of water more after being a Christian than I did when I was a Christian. I understand the power of food more now as being spiritual, as not being spiritual. I was watching, I ain't gonna throw nobody under the bus, but I was watching B. Simone podcast, and her best friend had said something about like, oh, well, they change what's healthy every year and da-da-da. And it's like, no, it's levels to what's, but spirituality brought me to what was healthy. Because the same way electricity flows through water, that energy flows through water, it's the same way it is with our fruits and vegetables, literally. So what they can do for us and the magnitude that fruit and vegetables can do that at compared to meat and stuff is by far like undeniable, and it's been proven for years. And as a spiritual person, eating meat and stuff is different. You feel, sometimes I can cheat with meat here and there, and it's like, okay, it was good, but I don't want to cheat with meat because that's what I don't want to consume. Sometimes I cheat with meat and I can like feel the pain from the animal. Like I can feel that they had a bad experience or that they were scared or something. And the more that I stop eating meat, when I smell it, it like turn my stomach up. Like, I don't know, it just smells so like strong when you're not eating it. And I cook a lot, so I don't know, I just feel like being spiritual forces you to acknowledge life. That's true life. Right? It forces you to acknowledge the power that God put in you for you to operate through this world. And the more you recognize that, I'm telling you, you can't help but continue to thank God, because it's so powerful. You can't even believe the power you got to move things around you. Like, and you can't help but acknowledge the power in food. Like I said, He gave you the energy you needed. He gave you the resources you needed. We wouldn't have as many sicknesses and stuff if we didn't eat as much meat and dairy as we eat. And we don't have to eat it, because the stuff that helps us the most, we literally can plant and grow at any number. Like, comes from dirt and seeds. And it even comes with more. When you kill an animal to eat it, unless it already had babies in its stomach, or unless you already let it have kids, you're not getting nothing else from that dead animal but that dead piece of meat. But the taste you get in that moment. When you grow fruits and vegetables, when you cut them off to eat them, you get seeds in the inside. That's how you know it was for you to take, and then it's for you to replenish, and they give you more to replenish. Like, for every one, you get how many seeds? Even though it's lighter in weight, for every one vegetable or fruit, you get a number of seeds. So spirituality forces you to recognize that. And then when you see that for what it is, like, that's a form of love to me. Like, knowing that God did not intend, not even say intend, knowing that I don't have to kill to eat plentiful, knowing that I don't have to take an animal's child, because animals have feelings too. And I know that's, people don't give a fuck. I didn't used to, but imagine a dinosaur taking your baby. You know what I mean? Like, I said dinosaur because I can't think of nothing else bigger than us. But I just feel like spirituality gets so deep. Like, you can't ignore stuff like that when you're spiritual. You can ignore it when you religious. I know because I watched people do it. I was religious and I ignored it. It don't even get that deep as to like, as it never gets that deep. Spirituality get that deep instantly. Because you knew you were sitting here with everything you need. And the fact that we got all these sicknesses and stuff going around, and people have been healing off of only fruits and vegetables and herbs all these years, I think is the biggest sign. Like, there's so much God around us. But I bet I would be, call all these names and damned or whatever, just because I don't say the name Jesus. But I just acknowledge so many different aspects of God. You get what I'm saying? Like, I was watching the B. Simone podcast, and her best friend, B. Simone, has said, like, I know God, but I don't know Jesus. And I thought that was so powerful, because she's saying that at, what, 32, 31? I was saying that at 12, 11, and 10. Literally, I was always a bright child and always been very devoted, because my mom was so devoted to the religion. Like, growing up, you just believe, So, like, when she said that, I thought it was so powerful. And then immediately after, on the set, her best friend is like, yeah, but at least you know that Jesus is the one that you wanted to get to know. Not crystals, and not sunshine, and not manifestation, and not da-da-da. Not the people who got podcasts that talk about manifestation. You naming all these things that God created that without man help. Crystals create on their own. Same way gold creates on its own. Same way diamonds create on its own. But you wouldn't doubt their value, though. I guarantee you wouldn't. Now, I'm not saying that we should pray to crystals or no shit like that, which people don't. And I even commented on that post and said, like, that is so uneducated, because nobody prays to crystals. For spiritual people, well, at least from my understanding, because everybody different, crystals are just an example of something else that is God made without a man having to form it. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm sure they are making them somewhere, but most crystals, at least real ones, form 100% on their own. Same with diamonds and gold. Now, what she also may not know is the same way that people can test the energy flowing through water, and people can test the energy flowing through plants and vegetables. There's energy in crystals and in gold and in diamonds, and these are real minerals that are just formed from dirt and earth, just like a plant comes from dirt and water. Those shit comes from dirt and stuff being compressed over years and years and years, and it has a velocity. Like, there is energy in it. Therefore, if it is already living because God created it, it's something that has some type of energy or living energy going through it. It's like being under the sun, being like, I feel energy from the sun. And you do. You truly feel better sometimes from the sun. That's more so of the representation of crystals. It's not like, oh, I feel better because I got these crystals. It's like, no, this is something man-made that naturally has energy in it. The same way I feel about plants and vegetables. And I just wanted around me to represent things that come from you. Something that a man does not necessarily have to alter. You know what I mean? I don't have to build a cross. A man had to make that. And not trying to be funny, that represents death more than it represents life. Just saying, that shit is depressing. But crystals, not crystals, like, y'all really will pray to a cross, which represents the death of a human being that you believe God sent here to show you can be perfect, even though he sent you here to have a human experience and to make as many mistakes, and you're not capable of being perfect in this lifetime, because he created you not to be perfect. Literally, you're perfectly imperfect. You were meant to have whatever experience you are having here. Period. Let me not get too motherfucking deep, because sometimes when I think about how people believe it be making me mad, because it be like, damn, Why damn yourself like that? Like, why make yourself feel down? You know, like, God would never want you to feel down. God would never want you to feel like you just can't be righteous, or like God would never. The moment I stepped into spirituality, I felt like God was molding me. I truly do. And I'm so thankful to be where I am now with the perspective that I have now. But that, I do bounce everywhere. I'm a little high, but yeah, that shit pissed me off that she was like, yeah, not crystals, not this, not that. And it's like, what's crazy is I don't even have no crystals. I think I got a sleeping stone in my bedroom. I don't even use crystals and stuff. All that stuff can be symbolism to a certain extent. So I will get them sometimes. Sometimes I get little candles, the colorful candles and stuff. Because colors are natural as well. They just, God created them, not us. But for one, I think it's important for people who not spiritual, to understand that anything that's not man-made usually has power in it already. And that's why spiritual people would like to have those things around as representation before having like a cross or something like that. Like, yeah. What's funny is, in the very next podcast after that, I feel like they tried to save face a little bit because she went so hard being a Christian at the end of that. So they had this dude on there, he looked like a white guy, talking about spirituality, basically. And you could tell they had him on there just to try and save face for like the previous episode, because although they was conversing with him, they wasn't listening. Like, anything he said that may have challenged the normal religious rhetoric, I felt like intentionally was like avoided or not responded to or ignored. When I felt like that was a prime opportunity. Now, spiritual people, one thing I tell you, we are not quick to argue. And I was more quick to argue when I was religious, when I was Christian. Oh, I'd be quick. I'd be on it. As a religious person, as a spiritual person, I'm not quick to argue because I don't need you to believe what I believe. I believe God gonna accept you back in you. God, like, ain't no back, like, you already with him. We all here just having a human experience. Whether you believe that or not, it don't change the fact that that's what we here doing. That's the one thing all of us can agree with. We here having a human experience. Whether you think you come from nothing, whether you think Jesus, whether you think, just God, we all know we here having a human experience. So it don't matter to me whether you believe it or not. Now, because I do believe what I think is true, if I feel like you're open to discuss it, and this is something you want to talk about, I'm open to talk about it because I believe that it's true. So I would love for people to experience truth because it's my truth. So I hope it's somebody else's truth. Wouldn't care whether it is or it ain't. But just saying, if that helped somebody else maybe get out of it. I was very depressed as a Christian. So if that was to help somebody else, I'm all for it. But it would have to be people who are open and willing to have a conversation about it. Like, there got to be something you want to discuss. I'm not just about to, especially because I know what it was like being a Christian. I know how I would have thought. I know how hard I would have went. So it just was like, I'll save it. It's not that deep for me. But when you come for me to have a conversation, I'm down to have a conversation. I'm not going to fight with you about it because it's just not. There's nothing to fight about. Like, you get what I'm saying? It's like, it's okay. If that's what you believe, it's fine. I don't believe that God don't love you no less because of it, so it don't matter. You believe God loves me less because of what I think. So that's a you problem. That weight you feel, that damning somebody to hell and stuff, that is a you problem. That's something you gonna have to deal with, not me. So yeah, that's to sum up how I feel spiritually. Oh, when I said this, they brought that dude on and they were like ignoring. It was like a point in the conversation where B and Megan had like kind of a side convo and was like, we just had a weekend. Oh no, something at the airport. The devil was testing us. That's what she said. The devil was testing us. The devil was really testing us. Like they was going back and forth. They were so serious. They must have had a rough day. And he was like, this is the perfect example of somebody who is very spiritual and trusts their spirituality and just, you know, and just observes as well. Because he wasn't forceful at all. He was like, well, I believe that every, you know, situation that we view as negative is happening for us. Whether we cause it or not, it's going to add to that greater good. It's something that's going to benefit you in one way or another. Literally 2 seconds after he said that, they was like, yeah, and literally repeated it again and said the devil was testing him. And it's not like, oh, you can't believe what you want to believe. It's just like the way that conversation flowed. It was like, that would have been a perfect example to be like, oh, is that, you know, to at least acknowledge, you know, what he just said, because y'all here having a spiritual evolution conversation. So it was just like kind of rude for somebody to say, somebody that you have on as a guest to be like, yeah, I don't even think that the devil, you know, attacks you. There's no such thing. I just feel like things happen for you. And then you be like, yeah, the devil was on my ass. It's like, and he was just like he didn't say much else. He just listened and just, you know, allowed them to finish their conversation. And I like their podcast because I feel like they are positive people. I feel like they have very good intentions. I feel like they say a lot of good messages, and they have a lot of good people on their podcast too. Sometimes I will stop watching the podcast because of their guests or because the lack of conversation. Some stuff be too, you know, for TV, for YouTube. So I do like their podcast. I was just using them as an example because that's one of the most recent things that I could think of that really sparked me wanting to talk about this. I wanted to talk about it anyway, but definitely they sparked it for sure. Well, I'm about to take a nap because I'm tired. I need to clean up because my man about to get home and I've been here all day. So yeah. Bye. So my next series of videos, well, my next video, I broke into 3 videos because the video ended up being so fucking long. I intended for it to be short, and I was intentionally making myself keep it short, and it's still. I'm gonna pull the inspirational quote, and then I'll let it get into the video. Pull out a 3rd one, and that's the one that I'm gonna pull. Okay. Kind words are like honey, sweet to the soul and healthy for the body. So be kind. It's sweet to the soul and healthy for the body. I'm gonna go ahead and put this up on here, and I'm gonna let y'all get into the video. Deuces.